Hey team, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys so much for being here. Today we are going to talk about our magical electional opportunities between the Aries New Moon on March 21st and our Libra Full Moon on April 5th. So March 21st obviously is a really significant date in astrology. It is the day when the sun enters the sign of Aries and kind of starts or kicks off our new astrological year. We see, of course, 0 degrees Aries as kind of like the beginning of the zodiac, so the sun coming back here every year initiates the vernal equinox, and we just kind of see it as like as of the astrological new year. And one of the astrological organizations actually kind of coined it something of a holiday, like International Astrology Day. So a lot of different astrological organizations will have different events, usually like some kind of panel or maybe a marathon of different lectures. I'm going to be a part of one of the panels for Astrology Hub. I'll put some information about that in the description below, where we're talking about game-changing transits for the year 2023. So tune into that if you're interested at all. That panel is free, but other organizations like Kepler and even other places will have some fun astrological giveaways or free things for people to watch and to spend time with in International Astrology Day. So be sure to take a look at that. I'll leave some links below for things that you might be interested in to follow up with. But here today now, we're going to talk about magical electional opportunities. I have no cats with me. I am recording at kind of a weird time of day for me to be recording, very unusual. So they don't know what's happening. They are out of it. They're sleeping in various places around the house. They've not quite migrated to my office yet. So we'll see if some sensors go off, some cat sensors go off. And they're like, oh, I gotta go. Cause chaos. Lee especially. He's probably banging down a door somewhere. He wants on the other side of the door. But there is no other side of the door. Trying to get out and cause problems, but I can't hear him, so it's a tragedy, really, I'm sure. But let's go ahead and get started. We have 4 electional opportunities to talk about during this new waxing moon. And all Australia, North America, and Western Europe are going to have more or less the same. Australia will have kind of a different, we'll lose one and gain one, unique one. So we're going to kind of talk about that as we go along, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Our first electional opportunity is going to be for a 9th Lunar Mansion talisman. And the 9th Lunar Mansion is kind of one of those weird ones. It's one that is a little bit more malefically oriented. So we usually tend to avoid it as much as we can, especially during like the waning moon phase, where we have to kind of weaponize its malevolency a bit more consciously, or just like be a bit more aware of what we're doing, what we're asking it to do, and how we're going about it. So usually in the waning moon, we focus on the 9th Lunar Mansion as like a banishing, like be gone, like get this thing out of here. Whereas in a waxing moon phase like we have now, we're focusing more on the 9th Lunar Mansion as a sort of like magical protection, as a sort of like a spiritual safeguard, helping to like kind of combat some of these more negative influences that are around us, try to keep us safe as much as we can. So that's where we lean into the 9th Lunar Mansion, the waxing moon. And so that's what we're going to do here. For the North American continent, the 9th Lunar Mansion talisman takes place on March 29th. This chart is set for 9:05 a.m. Central Daylight Time. And our main focus here is, of course, 2 things. One, we want the moon in the Lunar Mansion, obvi. And we want the moon to apply to a planet that can help us out. So in this case, we have the moon in the Lunar Mansion, in the 9th Lunar Mansion, and she's applying this sextile to Venus in Taurus, who's doing very well. Venus is the ruler of the ascendant. On the ascendant, a very nice, a very strong, sort of a benefic connection, kind of hovering over the ascendant. The ascendant, of course, represents the individual that the talisman is going to be working with or for. Usually yourself, if you're making your own talismans, is usually how I approach these, since I, of course, make my own talismans, and I encourage you to make yours own as well. So just a really nice connection. Venus, very strong in Taurus. Benefic planets are going to want to protect, are going to want to keep things safe. So this is a really good thing to lean into. We probably wouldn't want to lean into like a Saturn or Mars. I've seen instances where people have preferred to lean into those planets for protection. I have never found it to be very useful. I've seen a lot of instances where that kind of goes wrong really quickly. So I tend not to go to those planets. And I would much prefer to stay within like the benefic circle as much as we can. Even Mercury I wouldn't super use a lot. But this is kind of your basic setup. The ruler of the ascendant is unafflicted. The ascendant itself is unafflicted by Mars or Saturn. This really cute water trine with the malefic, so don't go swimming, please. That's a death by water joke. Those are funny. And then the moon also is unafflicted by Mars or Saturn. She's far enough away from this conjunction to not really have to worry about it anymore. 11 degrees is really far, and there are several other planets that are in the way, kind of between that anyway. So we worry less about that. Separating trine from Saturn, kind of same story, whatever. But no impending, no recently separated difficult or malicious aspects with the moon. Venus is also doing very well in where she's positioned. So all in all, just a really nice, a really safe ninth Lunar Mansion talisman to get some use out of. For Western Europe, this looks a little bit different. We had to have now the moon in the 11th house, which is fine. Still applying the sextile to Venus and here in the 9th house, which is whatever. You could probably play with this a little bit more if you wanted to. So I have this chart set for March 29th at 5:36, at 17:36. And you could probably tighten this up a little bit. Let me see what goes wrong. Let's see what could go wrong. Because what I'm thinking is getting the ascendant degree to be 15. Oh, no, that's fine. Yeah, okay, yeah, you can do this. Initially, I was worried because it moved the moon past the 11th house cusp. I was like, that's not good. She's out of that house now. But this just makes her more angular, closer to the midheaven, so that's fine. That was my initial, this isn't going to work. But yeah, if we can do something like this, we can get the Venus trine to the ascendant, and nice benefic aspects to the ascendant are always going to be more protective. So this can be a good thing to go for. The ruler of the first house in this instance is Mercury here with this nice Jupiter conjunction. So you sort of have this double, by moving the Venus here in this trine, you have this nice kind of like double benefic thing to work with, which I think is nice. And then of course the moon is still kind of applying this sextile to Venus. So another really great example, Mars and Saturn are still unafflicted. They're not afflicting the moon or the ascendant or the ruler of the first house. So some really great, we still kind of maintain a lot of the positives while avoiding all those negatives, and we can keep the similarity, I guess, where the North American version of this chart had a benefic aspect with Venus on the ascendant. Here we can get Venus trine the ascendant, so we can kind of keep that same spirit, keeping the moon applying that sextile. The kind of the saddest part about this chart here specifically, well, not this chart here specifically, but this kind of configuration that we're going for. And by that I mean like the moon Venus trine sextile, whatever this is. I don't know what my mouse here shape thing here at, but the worst part about this is that I wasn't able to get this to operate as like a Venus talisman. Like that would have been really cool to have a Venus in Taurus talisman with the moon in Cancer, just two really nice strong planets connected very well together. I wasn't able to get that to work because I couldn't get it to be Venus's day or hour at all. But now I want to do a science and see. No, it's not going to work. Crap. Because I was like, this might also be an opportunity for a good moon talisman, but this is the day of Mercury and the hour of Mars. And then by the time the moon makes it to the midheaven, she's already passed the sextile aspect, and it's the day of Mercury and the hour of the sun, which is not helpful at all for our goal. But yeah, unfortunately, Australia will not have an opportunity for this. They will have a slightly different opportunity for something else a little further down the line. So stay tuned for that. All right, our second electional opportunity is going to be a big one. And this is going to be for a sun planetary talisman. Now, sun talismans are something that we haven't had recently for reasons that are escaping me. I think about why. I know Saturn's been in Aquarius, which has made Sun in Leo bad. But I'm not sure about Sun in Aries. Maybe it just hasn't lined up well. But that's okay, because we have an opportunity coming up for those that have a decent working relationship with their natal sun. We have a sun planetary talisman opportunity for March 31st at 7:17 in the mornings. This is for North America. And there are a couple of, we got to be careful about the sun. So we have the sun here in the first house in the sign of Aries, which is its sign of exaltation. So the sun in exaltation, very angular, conjoined the ascendant. The moon is immediately applying an aspect to the sun, and this takes place during the sun's hour. So everything that we have, or everything that we need to have, is here. Something to keep in mind is that if you're going to go forward and make the sun talisman, it has to happen before sunrise at your location. It has to happen before sunrise. Because what happens after sunrise is that the planetary hour changes as the sun comes over the ascendant. And so we go from a sun hour to a Venus hour, and it has to be a sun hour. This is kind of the weird thing with the sun that makes sun talismans a little bit more difficult, is that you can only make one on Sunday after sunrise, Friday before sunrise, Wednesday before noon, or what's the other one? Or Friday afternoon? Is that right? Is it Friday afternoon? Yes. So those are the only real times that you can make. I had to check the other chart. That's the only real times you can make sun talismans, because of how the sun and how the sun interacts with planetary hours through the house cusp, which is a whole other thing that you can explore by checking out a link below in the descriptions, where I've written out an article that talks about Placidus houses as one of the best house systems in the world, of course, and how it interacts with planetary hours. If that's something you want to kind of dive more into and kind of go down that rabbit hole, it's a really fun and really interesting thing to look at. But anyway, all that to say that when it comes to sun talismans, we're much more constrained because of how planetary hours reflect daylight hours on when they can happen. So Friday before sunrise, Friday afternoon, and by that I mean immediately afternoon, Wednesday before noon, or Sunday after sunrise. Those are really our only 4 times that we can get sun talismans to work, so they get a bit more constrained. But anyway, so with that in mind, the election, the talisman has to be done before sunrise happens. So as you can see, this chart is set just before sunrise, so you'd want to get started sooner. You want to get started earlier than this to make sure that everything gets taken care of and wrapped up, so that you are finished and can go back to bed when the sun comes up. Because, I don't like to wake up early for things, and I don't like to tell people to wake up early for things. What a nightmare. The Western European version of this chart, there is an option for this chart to happen with the sun. Well, yeah, so we'll just do this. So this chart is set for 1356, so just before 2 p.m., sun on the other side of the midheaven. That's important. But there is an opportunity for this chart. You can do it, not there, and make it look more like the North American version if you wanted, with the sun coming over the ascendant. That's totally fine. It's just that your moon trine is a little bit further out. It's 7 degrees out. But if you... if you can't, if your only chance to do it, to get it done, is before sunrise, is the 7:30, that's fine. Absolutely knock it out if you need to. The alternative, the one that I think is better in my opinion, is the one that takes place just before 2 p.m. Because this gets the moon trine a little closer. Now it's 4 degrees. Now it's 4 degrees separated rather than 7 degrees, and as close. It's just one of those things. The closer you can get it, the better. Because why not? And the key thing here is that the sun has to be past the midheaven degree, but no more than 5 degrees past the midheaven degree, because then we're cadent, and we don't want that. We want a strong angular sun, and as long as the sun is within 5 degrees of the midheaven, we have that we're on there, we're there. The sun is the ruler of the first house. The moon is in Leo, applying this nice trine. The sun's not afflicted by Saturn or Mars. So in the North American, well, we'll cover it here, I guess. So one thing that might make this chart iffy for some people, and I totally get this, is that we have this Mars-Sun square that's 8 degrees separated. I think that's far enough to where it's not a problem. Other people might disagree, and that's totally fine. If you disagree, if you think that's still too close, then you'll want to do this chart with the Aries rising, because then that takes the bite out of the malefic square, with the Mars then representing the person that the talisman is going to work with. So there's still some... conflict, there's some tension there. There can be some friction there with the square still, but when you put it in, when you make the ruler of the first house the malefic afflicting planet, it takes away a lot of the anger. It takes away a lot of the malevolence to it. So it's a really fun electional trick to remember. Even outside of magical elections, even just general electional astrology, it's really good to remember too. So that's that. If the Mars Sun square is still too close and you don't really like it, have Aries rising solves the problem. But otherwise, that's the chart for Western Europe. Now, the Australian version of the chart is also kind of a one or the other, or you have some options depending on how you want to go about it. The first option is going to be on March 31st at 7:33 in the morning. So again, you want to have the sun in Aries. We've got that. The sun very strongly angular. You've got that. The moon immediately applying the trine to the sun, and it being the sun's day or hour, as long as the sun is below the ascendant. like that kind of hour before sunrise. It's the sun hour. Of course, as you can probably see, our kind of difference here is that the moon is in Cancer, in the last degree of Cancer. So we've got about a 10-degree difference between this, like between the sun and the moon, and that's pretty wide. That's not insurmountable. That's not a problem, I would say, for the sun and the moon, because they have very large orbs anyway. They're very bright, light-giving planets, so they have an extra long reach to where 10 degrees is not an issue for them. But if you don't like the 10 degrees, or if you would prefer a Sun in Aries trine moon talisman with the Sun in Aries and the moon in Leo, you can do that. Just kind of do that same thing where, not that far, not that far, not that far. Oh no, you can't. Yeah, you can't. That sucks. Australia, why do your houses have to look weird? So unfortunately, you can't actually do that, because while you could get this moon trine to be a little bit closer and in Leo, and kind of whittle this down, this distance down a little bit, the issue is that now you have Mars, the malefic planet, in the first house, and I don't like that at all. So actually, the Australian version would only have the pre-sunrise hour to work with. So, you only have yourself and your weird latitude to blame, I guess. So the third electional opportunity is going to kind of be an Australian exclusive. Not really, but it's just that this chart, the same chart in the other in Western Europe, North America, and North Africa too, are going to be kind of subsumed by the sun planetary talisman. So what I mean by that is that while this chart will still happen, you know, while you could still have this opportunity in North America, North Africa, and Western Europe, it'll kind of be happening at the same time as the Sun Planetary Talisman, while also basically doing like the same job as the Sun Planetary Talisman, to where I'm not sure that it really warrants being separated or being called out distinctly. But this is the 10th Lunar Mansion Talisman. The 10th Lunar Mansion is a great one for healing, for overcoming illness, for assistance with pregnancy and childbirth, and for finding reasonable medical professionals who can help you with whatever your issue is. Reasonable and competent medical professionals that can help you with whatever issue it is. I recommend the 10th Lunar Mansion a lot to individuals who are struggling with health conditions that are a little bit more like difficult to pin down, or are kind of associated with like a stigma where doctors or healthcare providers tend to be more guarded in treating, because it can help you find people who are willing to listen to you and help you get, you know, the care that you need. So always a very helpful talisman to have. But this is kind of what I was saying, like the sun also has really strong themes of health and wellness, to the point where I would just be like, yeah, just if it's happening at the same time as a sun talisman, and you have a good relationship with your natal sun, which I guess might be the thing to pay attention to in there, I might need to think more about that, then you might as well just do the sun talisman. But Australia has these as more distinctly different moments in time, to where it's fine, you know, to where it makes sense to talk about them a little bit more separately than the others. So in our chart here, we have the moon in the 10th Lunar Mansion conjoined the ascendant, and at the time she is applying this trine to the sun. Like I said, the sun is a planet that's very much associated with health and wellness and insight and finding things. So the sun really nicely kind of encapsulates a lot of the main themes of the 10th Lunar Mansion, which makes it a really great planet for the moon to apply to here. The moon and the ascendant degree are unafflicted by Mars and Saturn. The sun, as the ruler of the first house, is unafflicted by Mars or Saturn. So and it's conjoined this Jupiter here. So all in all, a really nice setup here for this 10th Lunar Mansion talisman, and something to definitely dive into if any of that sounds like an issue that you could use some assistance with. Our next electional opportunity for our locations is going to be for the 11th Lunar Mansion. And now the 11th Lunar Mansion is one that is much more like career focused, I'll say. It's very focused on getting honors from authority, increasing wealth. And so kind of in our current like culture of how people make money, the 11th Lunar Mansion is very useful for like negotiating raises, getting promotions, advancing to new career goals, I guess, like new levels in one's career. So the 11th Lunar Mansion is really helpful for people who are looking for gainful employment, who are looking for fulfilling employment, who are fulfilling employment, and who are looking to kind of get to the next place where they need to go, especially for people who feel kind of like stuck or unsatisfied with what they're doing. The 11th Lunar Mansion can be very helpful in getting you down the path that you need to go to get where you, maybe not where you're supposed to be, but a little bit closer to something more that you would like and enjoy. So in our North American version, this takes place kind of right on the heels of the Sun Talisman. The second option for the Sun Talisman, the one that happens after noon. This takes place on March 31st at 1446, so about 2:45 p.m. And here we have the moon in the 11th lunar mansion conjoined the ascendant, applying the trine to the sun, which is very much about like preferment and honors and advancement. So a good thing here for the moon to dig into, for a good partner here, for the moon to sort of borrow while she's working within the 11th lunar mansion. Mars and Saturn are not afflicting the moon, or the ascendant, I forgot what it was called for a second. And so the sun is also not afflicted by these planets and joined by this nice Jupiter here to kind of give it a little bit more support. So a really great election here. It would have been super cool if the sun was in the 10th house, but hey, you know, I can't make it. I can't make it all work. They have to work with me here. So the Western Europe and North African version of this chart has a fun story because I spent a while trying to finagle it to do anything. And the kind of time that I settled on is probably like the best option is going to be March 31st at 21:43, so around 9:45 p.m. And here we're going to have the moon in the 10th house, in the 11th mansion, and applying this trine to the sun. Again, the sun, a planet of preferment, advancement, honors, being noticed, you know, visibility. So it's a really good partner planet for the moon to work with while she's in the 11th mansion. The ruler of the first house is going to be Venus here in Taurus. Everybody that matters is unafflicted by Mars and Saturn. I guess everybody's unafflicted by Mars and Saturn. Yeah. At this time. And I had played with this a little bit because I would have preferred a moment in time where the sun was not under the horizon, you know, the sun over the ascendant, being visible in the day's sky, the night sky, would have been a really nice kind of touch to have on it. So I played with it for a little bit, and I guess I can just kind of show you what didn't make it. So I wanted initially a time kind of more like this, where we had like an option between a Virgo ascendant with Mercury, or a Venus ascendant with Libra rising. And I was like, oh, you know, why can't I do a time like this? It's like, here, this is why you can't, Ryan, because why would you want like Mars on the midheaven, like squaring all this? Like, why would you want that? Why would that be something that you want? So that's why we can't have that, I guess. That's why we can't have nice things. Mars is often the reason why we can't have nice things. So we kind of had to settle for a time where that wasn't happening. I guess we could have done something like this at 2011. If this is something better, the sun's setting still visible, I guess, in the sky. The moon's still applying to it. Venus is still ruler of the first house. The moon is just a little bit more cadent than she is in the original. So that's, I guess, an option if you want to go for that. But just make sure to avoid the Mars square to the ascendant if you're gonna play around with something a bit more like this chart. And then the Australian version of the 11th lunar mansion chart is also kind of neat. It takes place on April 1st at 2020. It takes place on April 1st at 1641. And so here you have the moon in the 11th mansion on the ascendant, and she's applying this trine to Jupiter in Aries, which is still perfectly fine. Something that I really liked about this chart is that the moon is technically venerated here, separating from the trine of the sun and applying to the trine of Jupiter. I think the sun trines count for veneration. The texts are a little unclear, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people will just tell me that veneration only counts if it's Venus or Jupiter, but I don't know. I think the sun counts too. So I believe that the moon is venerated here, and I think that's very helpful. But Jupiter is another planet that can be promising or helpful for career stuff, especially when it comes to like the financial reward of it. So Jupiter here may not be so much the like promotion and corner office kind of a thing that the sun is, but Jupiter's still like, here's a nice bonus, here's a nice pay raise, you deserve it, good job. And you know what? Good for us. And then our final electional opportunity for our Aries New Moon is going to be for the 13th lunar mansion. And the 13th lunar mansion is one that we haven't had a lot of options for because of Mars and Gemini. So while Mars spent thousands of years in Gemini, he's recently moved on to Cancer, which has opened up some of those some of those mansions that were more in mutable signs, like the 13th lunar mansion, which is from 4 to 17 Virgo. So thank God that's over, yeah? And the 13th lunar mansion is one that is primarily about like love, sexuality, relationships. And so you kind of see why you wouldn't want Mars square the moon in a 13th lunar mansion tile. You know, if this is a mansion that you're using to like find love or develop a new relationship or deepen an existing relationship, you probably don't want a Mars square. He doesn't get it. He's not going to help you. But now we're past that. Now we can move on into it. The 13th lunar mansion is really good for relationships, for love, for deepening relationships. It's also really good. It has like a more of like an erotic sexual side to it, which is, you know, which is great. It's different. And it has utilizations for addressing and healing sexual dysfunction, performance anxiety, erectile dysfunction, things like that. Like it's a little bit more male focused, but you know what? It's not going to pick and choose who it works for. So if anything, like that sounds like something that you need help with, something that sounds interesting, the 13th Lunar Mansion's got your back. Women are going to find a little bit more specific support in the 19th Lunar Mansion, but again, they don't pick and choose. It's just kind of what they're a little bit more naturally aligned with, a little bit more naturally assisted to help. But our 13th Lunar Mansion opportunity for North America is going to take place on April 3rd at 12:46 p.m. And here we're going to have the moon in the 13th Lunar Mansion, and she's going to be applying this trine to Venus and Taurus, which is perfect. Venus, of course, is a planet that's all about relationships, deepening them, making new ones, all about like expressing love, expressing sexuality. So Venus, perfect, exactly who we want. We also have the moon as the ruler of the ascendant here, and the moon and the ascendant degree are both unafflicted by Mars or Saturn, far enough away to not have to worry about this opposition that separated 12-ish degrees ago. What you could probably also do, what you could also do is if you wanted to cement this Venus connection to the ascendant, you can move this up to have the 21 degrees Cancer rising. Let me go ahead and do that just to show it. There we go. Yeah, so you can kind of cement this connection, and this takes place on my time at 1:10, but you know, whatever that ends up being for your time as you relocate the chart, that could also be a really good opportunity to shoot for. The Western Europe and Northern African version of this chart looks exactly the same, basically. The moon in the 13th mansion applying that trine to Venus, a planet that's all about love, sexuality, and relationships. We can get the 20 degrees Cancer. I went ahead and moved it to have 20 degrees Cancer on the ascendant, so you can solidify that connection with Venus. The moon and the ascendant degree are unafflicted by Mars and Saturn. Just a really nice connection here to help, you know, smooth out any relationship troubles, to make meeting people a little bit easier, and to, you know, find people that you click with. And then finally, the Australian version for the 13th Lunar Mansion is going to take place on April 3rd at 17:43. It looks a little bit different from the other ones. And here we've got the moon in the 13th mansion on the ascendant, still applying that trine to Venus. It's a little far. It's about 11 degrees away, but it's all we got to work with right now. And the ruler of the first house is Mercury here in Aries. Mercury is unafflicted by Mars or Saturn. This is turning into a sextile. And this is turning into a sextile too. So it's kind of applying to the malefics, but with good aspects. So nothing to really worry about there. I tried to play around with this chart a little bit to see what I couldn't do differently, just kind of tighten up this trine. And there wasn't a whole lot I could really do with it. I tried something like this with the moon in the 11th house to get this connection a little bit closer. And like, I guess you could do something like this at 2043. I wouldn't really say it's like super impactful other than having this connection. Let me see. You would have Mars as a ruler of the first house, which is fine. Mars is unafflicted. The ascendant degree is unafflicted. You can have an opposition between Venus and the ascendant. I don't really care for oppositions. I always refer to them as like trash tier aspects in magical elections. But, some aspect is better than no aspect. So when you don't really have a choice, oppositions can be useful. But, like, why? At that point, you're so far trying to force things that it's not usually worth it. And then I thought you could do something more like this. If you didn't like Mars on the ascendant, you could try for like Sagittarius. But then you get the Jupiter, who was a little bit combusty at this point with the sun. So we're getting kind of close to there that I didn't like. And then let's see what else. And then if I put the moon on the midheaven, I was like, aha, I solved it. Yeah. But then you get Mars opposite the ascendant, and that's not going to work. Mars isn't going to help you with this. Mars is not going to know what to do with the love talisman. So I wouldn't do that either. Unfortunately, even though it looks less cool, I think the moon on the ascendant at like 1743 is going to be your best option for this talisman, Australia. So hopefully next time around we'll have a bit more of a tighter connection here for you. But all right, everybody, thank you guys so much for being here. I hope you enjoy your Aries New Moon and your astrological new year kicks off with a great start. Make sure to check out the description for some links to some fun International Astrology Day things that you can take a look at and see what you find interesting. Make sure to also check out the Patreon for fun bonuses and giveaways that we do there. But everybody take care, and I will see you guys again on the Libra Full Moon. Hopefully with cats next time. I guess I bamboozled them by moving my recording time around.